Grandma from Grandma's Footsteps. Today we're going to have a look at wet felting, and I'm going to try to allay some of your fears that you may have to buy a lot of equipment and spend a lot of money, and also allay some of the fears about that it's really difficult. So, the materials that I use when I'm doing wet felting can be found around the house. First of all, I use a towel, just an old towel, no problem there. And a large piece of bubble wrap. I tend to save bubble wrap when I have parcels delivered, and this is part of what I use for my wet felting. And a piece of voile. Voile is what you can hang up at the windows. It's a very light fabric. So yeah, that's that. And a bar of soap, just ordinary soap, and some washing up liquid and some water. Couldn't be more simple, really, could it? So let's see how I go about it. I hope you enjoy the video. So we start off, we lay out the towel and our piece of bubble wrap, and then we just get ready. We've got all the stuff here. That's my piece of voile that I shall be using. It's actually an old curtain, so yeah, we've got a bowl of water. It's lukewarm, lovely. And here I've got, it's an old Febreze bottle, but what I've done is I filled it with lukewarm water and some washing up liquid. Not a terrific amount, but some washing up liquid. And my bar of soap. So very shortly we'll start laying down the fibres. Here we are. Now I'm just using, this is actually a merino bat, and it's got lots of colours in it, which is lovely, and it makes a good base for your fabric. And here I'm just using some small bits to fill in places where it's a little bit thinner or there's a gap. Just smoothing it out, really. You want this to be quite thin and wispy. You don't want great thick lumps, so spread the fibre out well. Now I'm just going to add some other bits of fibre, and you can see there that I'm pulling them out really, really fine. You want very fine, wispy pieces. You don't want thick pieces because it doesn't felt well. Pull them out into wisps and lay them down where you think you want them, and just basically crisscross them so that the wool goes in all different directions when you're ready to start the wet felting. You want it to go in all different directions. The background is basically up and down, so I'm going across and diagonally to just make sure that we've got fibres in all directions in order to wet felt it to make the best fabric. So I'll just continue to do this now for a while, just laying down some of the fibres. This is the second layer. I usually do at least 3 layers, and then perhaps some bits just on the top, just to get the colours and things where I want them. This is just for a random piece of fabric, but you can do pictures like this as well. You can lay down like blue for the sky, and then some green for hills, fields and such like, and some different blue maybe for some water down at the front, and you can make up at least the background of a landscape. You can put more detail on. You have to be a little bit more careful if you're doing a picture, especially when you first start to felt it with your hands, because you don't want things to move too much. When you're doing an abstract piece of fabric like this, then it's not so much of a problem if some of the bits move, but you want to be fairly careful. And now I'm starting to put on the red. I want to make a piece of abstract felt, but I want the predominant colour to be red, so I'm just laying down some bits of red now, some very fine bits, but I will actually be laying down quite a lot of red. That was just some odd bits I had there. Once I start working from the main piece of merino, it will go down a lot quicker. You can see now we've got lots more red on, and I think it's going to be really nice and perfect for what I want. I'm intending to use it as a panel on a small bag that I'm going to be making, and I'm going to be making it out of red canvas, hence I want the red colouring on the needle felting. Just continue laying on the red. And now I'm going to lay down some, it's basically bright Barbie pink, but the reason I'm using it here is that it contains some Angelina fibres, sparkly fibres, and I'd like a little bit of sparkle on the, I don't have red and I don't want to use just pure Angelina, so this pink is absolutely perfect. You can see that it's very shiny, it gives a nice shiny finish, a nice sparkly finish, and the thing about this, because it contains Angelina fibres, you will need to put other fibres across it and over the top. It will still show, but not as much, obviously, because the Angelina fibres themselves don't felt. It's an artificial fibre, and it doesn't felt well at all. So you'll see in a minute I will start to put some colour, probably the red, over the top of the Angelina fibres. I may put other colours, but you'll see that we are putting other things on the top just to make sure that it felts down as well as we can, because we don't want loose fibres. And now I'm adding some little bits of white just to put some highlights in, and I'm also using very fine bits of white to help to hold down the Angelina fibres there. As you can see, I'm putting some of it over, or the ends of it over the pink, but I do like a little bit of white in it as well, it just lifts it. spread it out. Very fine wispy bits of wool. I didn't like that bit, so I'm just amending it. I always pat it down as I go along. More red. Yep. A little bit of red there just to help hold down those fibres, and also because I want it predominantly red. I do want other colours in it, but predominantly red. I think this is tomato red. It's really lovely merino fibre. There are some links to some of the items that I get down below the video. They are Amazon affiliate links, so if you buy something using the link, I do get a small amount of money, which does help me to keep doing the videos for you, buy the materials so that I can do the videos and such like. So, and I would really appreciate it if you were to follow one of the links and buy something. It also helps if you can like, comment and subscribe. I'm concentrating on the edges. I mean, you can add neps or curly locks here, and again you need to put some bits of merino over them in places to make sure that they do felt down properly, particularly with the neps. Neps are notorious for not felting very well, but if you want to do that, then of course you can, and it makes it more interesting. I'm not using curly locks at the moment because I don't have any in the right colours. And you see here I'm using some bits of darker red just to give it a little bit of a sort of shadow effect, I suppose. It's a sort of maroon colour. And some more black. I put it on very fine. The original bat that I put down did have some Angelina fibres in, so there was a little bit of sparkle in there anyway, but we have mostly covered that up now. Although with all the manipulation and such like you do with wet felting, some of that underneath fibres will actually come up and attach themselves at the top, so you will see some of it. There it is, and now I'm going to start to spray it with my lukewarm water and washing up liquid to basically get it wet. You can use an old, like I've used an old Febreze bottle, or you can use an old washing up liquid bottle. That works as well, because basically you just want to get the washing up liquid water onto your fibres there. And you can see actually, just as I spray the water on, you can see that it's flattening itself out. So that works. And now I'll lay on the piece of foil over the top. And to start with, all we're going to do is to smooth it down very gently, and what we're doing is we're pushing the water down into the fibres and pushing the air out, and you do this quite gently, because at this point your fibres still can move quite a lot. Once I've done that, I will make it wetter. You want your fibres to be nice and wet, but you don't want to cause a swimming pool. You don't want the water to have so much water so that it's causing a swimming pool around the edge, or dripping off the table or whatever. But you'll see here now I add a little bit more with my hand, just to get it as wet as I would like. You can get one of those special squeezy things that they use, a squeezy bulb that they use. And now I'm soaping my hands. The reason for soaping your hands mostly is so that they will slide. Your hands will slide and not catch and move things. And that's what we're doing now. We're just starting that up, making my hands wet. So that's slows a little bit better. I noticed that up there was still a little bit dry. You have to be very careful and make sure you make your edges nice and wet as well. Otherwise the edges won't felt properly. Nice bit of water, a bit more soap, and I'll probably put some soap on top of the foil in a moment. Yeah, there you go. A bit more soap on top of the foil. Smooth it out. And that's the sort of amount of soap you want there. You want it to be nice amount of soap, and you can pull it back in from the sides, because you want your hands to slide. You don't want your hands to push things out of place. So just let it slide across. And then you can lift your foil off very, very carefully, just flattening down the edges. Once you've got it past your edge, it usually comes off fairly easily. And now you can see what your piece of fabric is likely to look like. I've decided that it isn't red enough, so I actually do add some more red, but I'm also tucking in, pushing in very gently the wispy edges. I don't want the wispy edges, so just pushing them in to try and make the edges a little bit more firm. So that's where we are now, and I think I'll probably be adding some more red in a moment, which you can do at this stage. You can continue to add for a while until it really starts to felt. So dry your hands, because trying to operate with merino with wet hands is not a good idea. It will be all stuck to your fingers, it will go everywhere, so get your hands nice and dry before you touch the wool again. you can see here, I'm pulling off the fine wispy bits. I do this by holding the wool quite a long way down and then pulling just the very ends, and that gives you a nice wispy bit and a fairly long strand. I'm just lifting the red colour. And how you make your pattern, what colours you use, is entirely up to you. I particularly like using the abstract to make the fabric that I use in my bags, simply because it's easier to cut out a piece. If you've got a picture, you have to be a lot more careful how you pick out your panel, cut out the piece to use as a panel. So that's why I like to use do the abstract. Very sort of calm thing to be doing, wet felting, sorry. And you can of course needle felt your fabric once you've made it and it's completely dry. You can add things if you wish with needle felting. You do need to make sure that they felt down really well, and I would advise that once you've done that, you do use the steam iron on the bits that you've needle felted, because you really do want them to be nice and flat, the same as your background is. So we're back to the rubbing now. Excuse me. Make sure my hands are nice and soapy. And now I'm going to be rubbing using just a little more pressure now, to make sure I'm pushing all the air out and smoothing the fibres down. So a little bit more pressure now. You may be able to see there that some of the red merino is actually coming through the voile. It's not normally a problem. You just wipe it off the top, pull it off, and that. But in this case, for some reason, there's a bit there. Look, it became very difficult to continue because it was coming through so much. When I was removing the voile, some of the fibres were lifting because they'd come through to the surface of the voile. So the best thing to do as far as that's concerned is to change it. I changed over from using the voile to using another sheet of bubble wrap, which you will see in a bit. As far as the bubble wrap is concerned, always put the bubbles towards your felt, because they act like little fingers. They help with the process, so when you're smoothing over the top, they're acting like little fingers underneath. So always put the bubbles towards your felt. It's not just there as a plastic layer because of the wet. It actually helps with the process. Now here I've changed to a second sheet of bubble wrap, and I've got the bubbles towards the felt, and as you can see I'm now rubbing it quite hard to felt it down, and I will continue to do that for at least 30 minutes. Not forgetting the edges. And because this is a fairly longish piece of fabric, I do actually turn it round as well, so that I'm not stretching too much. You can test how you're doing. If you lift the top layer and just push at some of the bits of fibre, and see if they move when you push them. If they do, then you'll need to put the top layer back and rub it for a bit longer. I think you'll find there that I found a few of them were moving, so we just continue. It's at least 30 minutes, but if you then discover that it's not completely felted down and some of the items are moving, then continue for another 10 minutes and test it again. You want to make sure that it is well felted. There is no point in doing this. Here you go, this is where I turned it round just to make sure that both ends are getting the same amount of treatment. Yeah, there is absolutely no point in doing this and then stopping 5-10 minutes short of actually having it felted properly, because it's quite a lot of work, and you want to end up with something really, really good and well felted. And there you'll see I'm testing it again. I'm rinsing my hands off. So, once you've finished all your massaging of the felt with the soap and such like, once you've done your 30 minutes, or at least 30 minutes, and you've checked that there's no loose fibres and it doesn't move when you touch it with your finger, when you move it with your finger, then you take it to the sink, and what you need to do is to rinse it in lukewarm or hand hot water, and it just rinse it and rinse it and rinse it and squeeze it and rinse it and manipulate it until the water runs clear. You want to get rid of all the soap at this point. You don't want any soap left in your felt. So that's what you do. Take it back to your work surface and get ready for the rolling process.
Roll, although I've actually just taken it off, which means I'm about to rinse it. So because it's still got a lot of soap in it, but as you can see, it's nice and red. And all the colours are showing up. It's rather attractive, I think. So this is where I will take it to the sink and rinse it out. I also rinse off all the soap off the bubble wrap, and there we are. It's come back. It's nice now. It's there's no soap in it. The bubble wrap's been rinsed and nice and clean. So now we're going to start the rolling process. Now, as you can see, I've got a sort of a nylon rolling pin, and I am rolling it with the bubble wrap in it, and nice and tight as you can get it. Really, you want to roll it up as tight as you can. There, get it right, all rolled up. Lovely. You can tie bits of ribbon or fabric or whatever around the ends. Some people don't bother to, but I find that it works better. I use elastic bands on the end of my rolling pin there, just to hold it in, and stop the bubble wrap from unrolling. And you start to roll, and you roll 100 times, just 100 times. You try to roll it nice long rolls if you can. You can actually roll from your fingertips right the way up to your elbows. You put a little bit of pressure on it, or quite a bit of pressure on it actually, and you'll notice I'm rolling it on the towel. Although you've squeezed out a lot of the water, there's likely to still be some in there, and it will come out the ends onto the towel. So keeps your work surface from getting covered in water. Oh, there we go. And you count up to 100. Just keep rolling and rolling. There you see, I'm doing some longer rolls there now at my wrist. Yeah, keep rolling. And once you've done your 100 rolls, you will unroll it. And you'll find that it has shrunk slightly, and it shrinks in the direction that you roll it. So your piece of fabric is going to get smaller and smaller. There you go, make sure it's nice and smooth. And then I always turn mine clockwise, because then I know which way I'm going. Down there to the front, grab my rolling pin and roll it up, and away we go then for another 100 rolls. So you turn it and you roll it 100 times from each side. sausage. Roll 100 times.
Hi, me again. Right, once you've finished doing all the rolling, that's 100 rolls in each direction, or 400 in total, you need to unroll it, unwrap it, and take it to the sink. And you want to rinse it. Now, you rinse it the first time in very hot water, as hot as your hands can stand. It does help if you wear rubber gloves. As hot as you can stand, rinse it and squeeze it and manipulate it as much as possible. Then squeeze as much hot water out as you can, change to cold water, and repeat what you've just done. Repeat the rinsing and the squeezing and the manipulating, and I do that 2 to 3 times. Now this will cause the piece of fabric to shrink more than it did when we did the rolling. When you do the rolling, it shrinks in the direction that you roll it, but when you do the hot and cold water, that will shrink in all directions, and it's a case of, it helps the felting process, and the change between the hot water and the cold water, some relaxes the fibres and some tightens the fibres. So you can see how it goes.